Well, we have to use stereotypes because we don't have the time to treat every instance as though it's really a new event. It's much more efficient to treat it as a class of broader events about where we already have information on those things. I've never sat on this chair before, but I didn't test it. How did I know that this would be able to hold me and wouldn't just melt, or who knows? I mean, there are all kinds of things that I didn't know about this particular chair, but I made an evil, oppressive stereotype. I used that evil, oppressive stereotype, and I just treated this chair like any other chair. But it turns out that was a pretty good stereotype. The thinking that this chair would be comfortable and I could sit on it served me as a pretty good guide to my behavior. And not only did it do that, it took me a microsecond. I didn't have to go through and check the chair beforehand. So where stereotypes have a kernel of truth to them, they are useful to help us. Of course, where we get into trouble is when we're using stereotypes that don't have a kernel of truth to them. And that's something that's often very hard to know. So some of our stereotypes, it turns out, have some validity, some don't, and we can't always know which they are. And even if some of those stereotypes do have a kernel of truth to them, they may not have a kernel of truth to them for the right reasons. It doesn't mean there's noble. It could be all kinds of horrible processes that led to the fact that stereotype is valid, but that doesn't. So I'm not endorsing the fact that some of these stereotypes, even if they're true, are indeed oppressive. Some really are. But it's nonetheless, from an information processing stance, useful to use them. The other thing I would want to say about stereotypes is it makes sense to use them, but to use them as a first guess. But then it's also important to be able to update that with real information as you get it. And so that's what we find when people are looking at people's spaces, is that people do use the stereotypes when they go into people's spaces. They make generalizations. They say, oh, okay, this space clearly belongs to a female. Therefore, I'm going to activate some of my stereotypes based on differences between males and females. And that's a good place to start. But what's really important is that you quick to abandon that if there's other information. And that's the danger of stereotypes. The danger of stereotypes is that we use them and then we stick too closely to them, and we're unwilling to revise we're unwilling to revise our impressions afterwards on the basis of new information. And the other danger is that we think those stereotypes may exist for some good reason, whereas it may not be a good reason that they exist. Yeah.